I mean, my background personally comes from documentary theatre, but Ice and Fire, I joined Ice and Fire when I moved to the UK in 2006, and Ice and Fire was established in 2003. So the mission of the company is to explore human rights stories through performance. We do that in a number of ways. So we have what we call 3 strands of work. One is production, which is full-scale productions that cost quite a bit of money, take a lot of time to, develop and produce, and we work with artists, all sorts of artists, to collaborate on those kinds of productions. They always have a human rights story at the heart of it. So the last one we did was about the end of the Sri Lankan Civil War, which came to an end in 2009 and was extremely brutal, and was very hidden from the world's news. Like, not many people knew how horrific it actually was. So we talked about that. We've done productions about independent journalists across the world. Lots of different productions, but they all have a human rights focus. Then we have a participation side of our work, which means we work with communities, we work with non-artists, people who, mostly asylum seekers and refugees actually, and mostly people who are going through a therapeutic process, and we work with them to create work that they perform, that comes from them and is presented by them. Then the third strand of work is what we'll focus on in this interview. It's called Actors for Human Rights. It's a network of professional actors across the UK, about 700 of them, and we take scripts on a rolling tour of the country, and these scripts are made up of verbatim testimonies, so people's real words, and we present rehearsed readings of those scripts to all sorts of audiences around the UK. And the way that it works is that people get in touch with us. They say, we've got a venue, we've got an audience, we want you to come and do a reading of the play. So we don't have to do any producing, really. I mean, we launch the scripts when they're ready, but once they're launched, it's up to everybody else to put it on. And so we rely upon people's goodwill, people's interest in getting these stories out there, and they organise the performances for us. Normally they will also pay for the travel of the actors. Most of the time the actors will volunteer their time for a day, but sometimes, depending on the organisation, they'll also pay a fee. So it just depends on who's asking us. So sometimes we get student groups asking us, and they can't pay anything because they don't have any money. So we say that's fine, but sometimes it's like UNICEF or Save the Children or Amnesty or something, and they can afford to pay a fee. And the testimonies themselves are people's stories, and all of them have been through some form of human rights abuse. They've all come up against the state in one way or another, and had to fight for their rights. And we look at situations in the UK, but we also look at situations outside the UK as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Then how did you collect, particularly Actors for Human Rights, I think the play, the testimony? How did you, you correct, or you have a pool of authors or playwrights to talk to the refugees, or people who are, so they're more refugees?
So,
who are they, and how did you collect the stories?
So we'll focus on one script. We've got about 15 different scripts. So let's focus on asylum monologues, because that's the one that gets requested the most. So what we do is we build up relationships with people over time, and because we have been involved in the campaigning world for a long time, people tend to trust us, tend to know we've got the best interests of people at heart, and we get to know people, and they decide whether they would like to share their stories with us or not, and we interview people for many, many hours. When things change in their case, then we go back and follow up and add that bit of detail to their story, so we can update the script as we go. Sometimes we think, okay, something new is happening in this field, we should get a new story that reflects that, and then so we go out and we can update it in that way. So at the moment we've got for asylum monologues, we've got about 30 different testimonies, and it's a very modular script, so we can change it depending on the circumstance. So for example, we go into schools sometimes and we use stories of young refugees, young asylum seekers, because that will connect to a younger audience. Sometimes there's an event that has a female focus, so we'll just look at women refugees. Sometimes there's an event about a particular region of the world, so we'll look at stories from that region of the world, if you see what I mean. So we can change the script depending on the circumstances, and what we do is we just intercut the stories, so it's not just it's not just one story, the end, another story, the end, and it's just a simple way to sort of give the script a momentum. And it's generally 3 different stories that we present, that goes for about 45 minutes. Yeah, and professional actors will present. Yeah.
Oh, that is quite flexible.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's necessary in terms of if you want to create something that will work for campaigning groups, that will work for people who don't have a lot of experience in event organisation or the arts in general. You need to give them something that's very easy to do. So if you say to them, oh, but we need lighting and we need sound and we need speakers and we need this, that and the other, no one's going to want to work with you, But if you say, we need a room and chairs and an audience, they'll go, okay, we can do that, I mean, while we do see the value of that kind of work, the big productions and all of that, and we do that ourselves, this is very, very, I guess the way we see it is that this is urgent news, this is something you need to know about now, and we want to be ready to deploy that information, whenever people are ready to hear it. So sometimes people get in touch with us and they say, can you come next week? And we can come, because we've got actors all over the country and we can just see who's available and then turn up. So it's a kind of ready-made event. It's not incredible to look at or anything, because it's really, you're talking about 3 actors sitting on chairs reading a script, but you will know with working with actors that if you've got good actors, that can be quite a magical experience for an audience, and these stories are amazing, they're remarkable stories, so it's very much an exercise in asking an audience to listen and listen carefully, and then see what they think at the end of that. And we always, whenever we can, have a discussion afterwards, where we talk about what can you do. Don't feel depressed. Don't feel like there's nothing you can do, because actually there are lots of things you can do, and sort of point them in the direction of places they can go, of charities they can volunteer with, of initiatives they can sign up to. So it's very much targeted in that direction.
Because, for example, the story are from real persons, and you're using the testimony, you just added them, then why are you so committed to this kind of work, particularly related to reality? And if you can share one stories with us,
sure.
That would be to have a sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's there always seems to be a personal connection for people who take this on as their life's work. And for me, I guess it was in Australia. I was an actor at the time, and I don't know if you know much about Australian refugee policy, but it's pretty harsh. It's internationally sort of renowned as terrible policy. And what happened at one point, this is 2001, was that a very controversial incident where there was a boatload of asylum seekers coming from Afghanistan and Iraq. The boat was sinking, it asked for help, and a Norwegian shipping vessel came and rescued them. And the law of the sea says you should bring people to the next port, and the next port was Australia, but our Prime Minister wouldn't let them in, and he left them on the sea for 8 days, and this was headline news, and eventually he shipped them off to Nauru, which is a tiny island nation that survives on Australian aid, basically, and detained them for the next 4 years. But and that was shocking enough, but the most shocking thing to me was that 85% of the Australian public agreed with the actions of the government. And I just thought, hang on, I don't understand my country. I thought I understood it, but I don't. And then I started getting involved, and I went to a meeting where a woman she just arrived in Australia, and she had survived the sinking of another boat on the way to Australia, but this one sunk and 353 people drowned around her, and she was one of the only survivors. And I think, she was telling her story to us for the very first time, I think, and we were in a small room and we were actively listening to every word she said. And it was just a light bulb moment for me, because I thought, I'm not hearing this anywhere else. What she's telling me, I haven't heard this anywhere else. All I hear is hysteria and sound bites and, politicians with their rhetoric and people, giving one-line suggestions about how it should be dealt with or not dealt with. But I don't hear the stories at the heart of this issue. If only people heard this, maybe they'd think differently. So that was really the beginning for me. And so I asked her whether I could come and talk to her and interview her, and she kindly agreed. And we talked for many hours, and her story ended up being the spine of the script that we created, called Something to Declare, and we toured it around the country for 3 years. So that was it really, and that I guess it was the effect it had on me, of hearing someone's authentic words in the way they wanted to say it, in the time they wanted to take, that made me think, I think if people heard this in a kind of similar way, they might have a different experience of it than they have from reading the news or hearing the hysteria about it. And that's where the idea began.
I'm just wondering, interested in your process in writing, and not only you write, or do you involve other playwrights, and if you're involving other playwrights, then do you have I don't know how to describe do you have a selection, what do you want from the testimony, or do you
Sure.
collaboration process?
Yeah, so let's start with the process of scripting. So yeah, you get to know that person, and it's less of an interview. I don't go in with 20 questions, answer this question, it's more, let's get to know each other. Who are you? Tell me about your childhood, tell me about your parents, tell me about what you did when you were a teenager. It's more like a life history conversation. And I find that once you sort of reach the half an hour mark in this kind of conversation, people start to understand, oh, she is interested in what I'm saying. She doesn't want me to just give one sentence answers. She actually wants to know everything, as much as I want to reveal. And that gives them the space to just relax and go off on tangents and say things that are unconnected to the motive of the interview. But that means that we can present this person as a person, not just a case study, not just they arrived here on this date, they did this, they got refused, and they're not just a refugee, they've obviously got a whole story. Yeah, before they became a refugee. So that's why it takes so long, and then you go away and you write it, you type it all up, and there's about 50 pages of stuff, and it takes time. I mean, it is a skill. It's it's just an instinct for it that I have. But at first, I was like, oh, how am I going to get through all of this? But then you just, you have to be pragmatic about it. You go, okay, you've got to create a chronology, but you also have to allow the humanity of that person to shine through. As much lightness as you can get is great, as much humour as you can inject into these situations, because most of them are terrible situations, is great. But that is possible if you have enough time with that person, because they will reveal really amazing things. And then you go back to that person. You don't just say, okay, bye-bye, thanks for that. You then go back to them with what you've edited down and go through it with them and see if they're happy with it. Sometimes they'll want to change some details. Sometimes they'll say, oh, actually, don't put that in after all. Or why don't we, can you add this extra context? But usually it's very small details. And then wherever possible, we invite that person to come and see the performance of it so that they can actually see it live, because it's very different from reading it on a piece of paper. See the effect it has on the audience and all of that. Sometimes people will speak afterwards as well if they feel they want to. But yeah, a lot of the people I've met over the years have just become friends, and I stay in touch. And we also sort of go to tribunals with people and are witnesses at their asylum hearings. We write references for them. It's a kind of like an added it's not just an artistic project, it's not just a campaigning project, it's a solidarity thing. And it's kind of, well, we're not just interested in you because of your story, we want to help you get to where you need to get, and obviously we're not lawyers, we're not charity workers, but we can do what we can, and sometimes that is quite instrumental in how their case progresses. But a lot of people describe it as being very therapeutic and cathartic, speaking to someone for that long, and particularly a stranger. Actually, they say that it's much easier to talk to strangers about these very deep and sort of emotionally charged things, because if they don't want to see us later, they don't have to. But if you do it to your family or your friends, then they have that knowledge and that memory of what you've said. And I don't know. Sometimes you just have more unexpected conversations with strangers than you would where there's already a dynamic set up with family or friends. So does that answer your question about the process? I think it was something about, do I have a criteria or something?
Obviously you don't work on your own. You're the artistic director, you have a team, and then I'm sure you have like other playwrights. And so I'm just wondering if you have like certain criteria or like specific technique or like style, let's say for example, in this group that you want. For if someone write or edit the testimony for you, for example, to include it in the
Sure, yeah.
For example, the performance, like do you have certain, it's more like artistic like question.
Yeah. I mean, I think just to go back to what I was saying before, really, allow their humanity to come through. Allow us to see them as a real living, breathing person. What's their sense of humour like? What are their quirky personality traits? There was one guy who was telling us about Syrian man who was telling us about how he met his wife, and then he made her wedding dress because he was a fashion designer, and he didn't even measure her. And she said, well, how do you know my measurements? It's perfect fit. And he said, oh, because from my arms, And, he hadn't seen her for 52 days, so he brought her 52 red roses, So you let that kind of side of a person come through, because that allows an audience to, it just allows an audience to identify and say, oh, he's just a normal guy like you and me, because we see these images and we hear these stories on the news, and we sort of think of, I'm talking about asylum seekers now, we sort of think of asylum seekers as this kind of group of people, that are just kind of coming to Europe, en masse, and it's very, very hard to go, oh, each one of those people has an individual story, an individual personality, individual motivations, and individual ways of expressing themselves. And I guess that's the power of theatre. That's the power of art in general, to kind of allow people to kind of just connect with other people that you would never normally connect with. So that's it. Yeah, and that happens a lot across the UK as well, and working with young people. We're going to be starting a project working with young people in prisons soon, that kind of thing. And I'm doing another project with Pacific Islanders about climate change, so I'm going out there to kind of make a work with them. But so with the refugees and asylum seekers, it takes time. It takes time. It takes much longer than doing the actors' human rights work, doing the testimony work, because that's sort of an intense experience with someone, and then you go away and make that into something. But with a group of people who are not artists and who have other things going on in their lives, even getting them together as a group is quite challenging. And normally you can only ask them to come together maybe once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks. So the time you have with them is precious, but in that time you have to build up trust, you have to build up a group dynamic that allows for sharing and openness, which is not easy, and a willingness for people to go there, because the artistic experience and creating theatre can often be quite weird. People are like, why are we doing this? What is this all about? Where are we going with this? And you have to sort of create an atmosphere where they trust you. They trust that it's going somewhere, even though it seems like it's not. Like,
In the
why
middle.
why do you want to know about my pet? I mean, you know, what's that got to do with anything? You know, just trust me, it's fine. So then after many weeks of getting together, you start to build some kind of content. And my practice is I just record every session we have, and then I transcribe that, because often people say things like throwaway comments that you think they don't really mean much in the moment, but then when you go back and listen to them, you're like, oh, that's actually really quite insightful, and it tells me a lot about you, and you probably don't know, you know, how much that actually tells the world about you, but you know, when I present it back to them, they're like, oh, did I say that? Really? Okay. But it's time consuming and quite fragile. Some people feel sometimes that halfway through they go, I can't do this anymore. You know, it's opening up too much emotionally for me, you know, and you have to navigate around that. And you have to allow people to leave if they want to. You have to allow people to assert themselves if they want to. So it's quite a difficult but extremely rewarding process. And so we worked with a charity called Freedom from Torture. They're the biggest torture rehabilitation centre in the world, I think, with some of their clients. And we've worked with another sort of therapeutic organisation as well. And so it's part of their therapy as well. It's part of healing, you know, as well as, you know, tapping into creative expression and the power of that. And then we present it to audiences. I mean, you can only do it a few times because, you know, it's not easy, as I said before, to get people together that this isn't their lives. They've got other lives. They've got other worlds that they live in. But yeah, we record it, and we have it. We have the kind of archive of everything we do online, so people can listen to it and watch it if they can't be there live.
It's in a performance setting, right? For the participation.
Yes. Yeah.
Not an exhibition or like.
No, it's live. Yeah. But the last one we did with Freedom from Torture, we recorded it audio. So like professional audio recording, so you can listen to it online. So we adapted it for audio, so that, you know, people can actually experience it if they want to.
And then for performance, or actually I want to go back to the transcription. Like, I think it's one of the very important technique you apply. And so you normally transcribe everything.
Yep.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Yeah.
That's really a lot of work. If it is a group discussion, normally like those workshop setting, you transcribe everything.
Yeah.
And do you have a team of people working for that, or? I'm just like preparation process that is very important for the creative.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Like, just want to know how, like, the procedure normally. Like, you transcribe and then you work together with. I think. Oh, sorry.
That's
the
okay.
question is, for example, the performance, you have actors involved.
Yep.
Do they involved in transcription, or
No.
you do it on your own first? You have a script.
Yeah.
And then they
So we give them.
Do they have to listen to?
No.
Like that? I'm just wondering, like, this whole.
No, but
process.
there is a process like that. I mean, you probably come across it, which recorded delivery, which is what London Road. Yeah. So no, they don't do that. We present them with a script, and we say, this is the script. Get familiar with it. Come on the day. We'll rehearse it with you. I mean,
How about how you produce the script then? Like the transcription?
Sure. Well, yeah, that takes time. I just find it's very useful to transcribe because it reminds you of what was said, and it brings back the things that might become something or might stick with an audience. And sometimes there are things you forget someone says, and then as you're transcribing, you go, oh yeah, that was really good, you know. And little details often are really important.
So you have a team, like I follow up. So you have like several.
Yeah, there's a couple of others working on the Actors for Human Rights project. Yeah, I do most of the editing though, because I think that's quite difficult to do. And as I said, it's a skill that takes time. When I started, I was very green and not very good at it, and it took me days and days and days and days to even just get it down to, you know, half of what it was. But now I can do it quite quickly, and as I said, I've just got an instinct for it now, which comes with practice, you know. So I often do the editing. Yeah.
And do you have like audience asking if the performance or what they hear are real or not, or this kind of question coming up?
Yeah, we always introduce the script before it starts. We always say, this is what it is. These are real people stories. What you'll hear is the result of interviews we've done with. So people know, even before they've heard it, what it is, so they don't have to question that as as they're listening, because I think that would be quite weird to kind of think, is this real? Is it not real? Is it someone's work of imagination? So I think setting that out very clearly in the beginning is important. Yeah.
And for performance, like, or I think it's our observation, let's say, for example, when like in Germany, we watched some other performances, the documentary theatre, and they took interviews as well. But very often, like, there are lots of theatrical or imagination add-on to the scene.
Yeah.
And for you, when you do the performance, you want to keep it very realistic, or you like, I'm just artistically how?
Sure. I mean, no, it's not realistic at all. I mean, we don't cast it for type. So if we've got 3 stories, one is a Ugandan woman, one's a Congolese man, and one is a Syrian man, we don't cast people that look like that. We just cast good actors who can tell a story well and communicate a story well. So in that sense, it's not realistic at all. There's no accents involved. There's no characterization. You know, it's very much about. It is about emotionally engaging an audience. So the actors are very aware of navigating a script, but that's what actors can do very well. So it's just what actors know how to do. But we don't in any way say, okay, imagine that you are this person. You know. It's about bearing witness. You know, I'm here to bear witness on behalf of this person who can't be here, basically. So what was the question again?
No, it's like because we didn't have a chance to see the work.
Oh, sure. Okay, you mean the aesthetic of it? Yeah.
Yeah, the aesthetic.
Yeah. It's very, very, very bare bones. I mean, okay, if we were doing it in this cafe, we'd turn off the music. Number one. But then we'd ask people just to sort of stop banging around. But we'd probably just set up 3 chairs here, set up an audience there. That would be it.
Oh.
It's very, very simple. Because
that performance, like not the reading of the actors.
Oh, the reading? No. So
I'm asking like
our productions. You mean?
Yeah,
yeah. So then we have everything. You know.
Let's just ask like how like. Because they're like inevitably in the theatre, we have like lots of imagination and the magic of theatre, and to add on another layer of this script, and they are coming from real like testimony. Even though like how I'm just wondering how, for example, London Road, they musical and like all the stagings, and at the moment I found I have a like the blurring of reality and theatre in that sense. Like I'm just wondering how's your work when you direct it, for example, or you invite directors to direct it, like what direction you're like.
Well, each production is different because each director is different and each cast is different and each script is different. So the last one we did was The Island Nation, and that was it was based on reality, but the characters were fictional, and I mean, 2 of them weren't because they were the president at the time, and you know, that kind of thing. You know, there were 2 real people in it, but actors were playing them. But it was a constructed world, you know. So the script was, I wrote the script, I wrote the scenes. They weren't testimony, you know.
Okay.
So we have that side of our work as well that we do, and a lot of it was kind of. There's quite a lot of surreal imagery because you know
so
we had.
I think I kind of mix up
So that's the first strand of work I was talking about, production, the production side, which takes a long time and it costs a lot of money.
But those stories or those scripts are not. Can I say that they're not?
Documentary.
Verbatim? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
Yeah. I mean, it's based. That one was based on real events, but it was made up. Okay. You know, I mean, the events that happened were real, but the people taking us through the story were not real. Yeah.
I'm clear now.
Yeah.
Because like from the website, I'm like,
Sure.
Good. Like then we know like which part that we include and.
But then we did do one production which was based on the lives of 5 independent journalists across the world, and they were real. So we had some of their real words, but it was intercut with some imagined scenes as well, some dramatisation. So it was a kind of combination of the two sides of, documentary plus just fictional writing.
Okay, I see. I'm very much clearer now.
Okay, good.
The work and the theatre.
Sure.
And just a moment.
So when do you decide? I think all the three streams inform each other, right?
That's right.
Yeah. When do you decide to decide to do a production, and instead of stage reading? So what is the criteria for you to decide whether it's suitable for a production or not?
Sure. I mean, we've got three different productions in development at the moment. One is a musical, one is a sort of interactive game theatre piece, and one is more of a public performance that's going to happen when there's a big arms fair that's coming to London in September, so we're going to do it around that. So very different forms, very different ways of making the work. We're always working on something in the production strand. And it just takes time, and we have to find the right moment to produce it. The arms fair one is, we know when we're going to produce it because there's a very good moment to produce it. With a musical takes so long to develop that it's probably another 2 years for that. So it's, you've always got things in the pipeline. And how we choose a theme, is that what you mean? Well, it's a combination of, we've started a new process of making productions where we work with other companies, so we're always going to do co-productions from now on, because I think that challenges us as a company to sort of think aesthetically differently, but also opens up new audiences to us and opens up new ways of working. So the musical is a co-production with another company that works on theatre for younger audiences. So they were very keen on something playful and fun, and we would never have done a musical had we not been working with that company. And we found a composer that was very witty and very funny, and he got the seriousness of the issue, which is about long-term unemployment in the UK, but also is very funny and witty and is able to kind of balance it and create a very entertaining world given that theme. So yeah, it's ad hoc in a way, and a lot of it's gut feeling. It's kind of like, oh, this works, I think this could be good, but we're always working on it. It's not as if we do a production, then we go, right, that's done, now what do we do next? There's always something in the pipeline. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you have any suggestion for artists who want to try to start documentary or verbatim project.
Yeah, I mean, my
suggestion or hint.
Yeah, my one major suggestion is steal my idea. Just take it. Just take it. And if you want advice from me, ask me. I'll give you advice, because we've got a German group has started up doing the actors for human rights work. An American group is going to do it now. We've had interest from an Italian group. So if you like the idea, if you think you can put some time into it, and there's enough interest in Hong Kong to get it going, I'll be happy to give you advice and guidance on how to make it happen, because I think it's an idea, and it's such a simple model. And I think it could happen anywhere in the world, because everywhere in the world has their own problems, has their own human rights issues, has their own social justice struggles, has remarkable stories to tell from ordinary people. And this is a model that just makes that happen very easily, makes those stories heard very easily, and in a kind of very intimate, focused way. It's not like you go onto YouTube and you watch something for 5 minutes and maybe think about it. You're in a room with other people, and you're there's something about a collective responsibility when you're in a room with other people and listening to these stories. It makes you listen in a different way. So steal it, take it, do what you will with it. But it didn't take me long to get it going. 6 months and it was happening, and I've been doing it now for 10 years. So, and it's never run out of steam. People constantly want us to come and perform for them. So that's my advice.
Yeah.